They tortured over 150,000 people in the name of God. The methods they used were so horrifying that even the Pope tried to shut them down. And the Spanish government kept it running for 350 years. Spain. 1478. A new kind of court had just been created. Not a court of law. A court of faith. Its purpose was simple: to find heretics. People who had secretly abandoned the Catholic faith. People who practiced Judaism or Islam in secret. People who held the wrong beliefs. And to make them confess. By any means necessary. Over the next 350 years, this institution would imprison, torture, and execute tens of thousands of people across Spain and its empire. It would become the most feared organization in European history. It operated with the full blessing of the Spanish crown. And it answered, ultimately, to God. This is the true story of the Spanish Inquisition. And it is far darker than anything you were taught in school. But to understand why the Spanish Inquisition was created, you must first understand the world of fear and suspicion that made it not just possible, but popular. In the late 15th century, Spain was a kingdom obsessed with religious purity. For centuries, the Iberian Peninsula had been home to Christians, Muslims, and Jews living in an uneasy but functioning coexistence. But as the Christian reconquest of Spain neared its completion, that coexistence began to collapse. Tens of thousands of Jews and Muslims had converted to Christianity either voluntarily or under intense pressure. They were called conversos. And almost immediately, they were suspected. Were they genuine Christians? Or were they secretly continuing to practice their old faiths behind closed doors? The suspicion was everywhere. Neighbors reported neighbors. Servants reported masters. Old grudges were settled under the cover of religious accusation. In 1478, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella petitioned Pope Sixtus IV to establish a new Inquisition in Spain. The Pope granted permission. But he almost immediately regretted it. Within years, he was writing furious letters to the Spanish crown, accusing the Inquisition of proceeding wrongly, motivated not by zeal for the faith but by lust for wealth. The Spanish crown ignored him. The Inquisition had a life of its own now. And it was only just beginning. Because what the Spanish Inquisition actually did to its prisoners, inside its secret chambers, was something the Church tried very hard to keep hidden from the public. The Spanish Inquisition operated with a terrifying efficiency. It began with an edict of grace. A public announcement in every town. Citizens were given 30 days to come forward and confess their sins voluntarily. Those who confessed during this period were treated relatively leniently. But the Edict of Grace served another purpose. It invited citizens to denounce their neighbors. Anonymously. And the accusations flooded in. Once arrested, a prisoner faced a process designed to produce one outcome. Confession. They were brought before inquisitors in secret. The charges against them were read. But the names of their accusers were never revealed. How do you defend yourself against an accusation when you don't know who made it? Prisoners were held in isolation. Sometimes for months. Sometimes for years. They were denied contact with family. Denied access to priests. Allowed only the company of their inquisitors. Who visited regularly. To ask the same questions. Over and over. Until the prisoner broke. Or until the inquisitors decided that gentler methods had failed. And that it was time to move to the chamber below. Because the Spanish Inquisition had a very specific philosophy about torture. A philosophy that made what happened in those chambers even more disturbing than most people realize. The Spanish Inquisition officially maintained that it did not shed blood. This was technically true. And it made absolutely no difference to what happened to the people inside its torture chambers. The three primary methods of torture used by the Inquisition were the garrucha, the toca, and the potro. The garrucha involved binding the prisoner's hands behind their back and hoisting them into the air by a pulley system attached to their wrists. They were suspended, then dropped. Stopped just before they hit the ground. The sudden jolt dislocated shoulders, tore muscles, shattered joints. The process was repeated again and again. The toca, known today as waterboarding, involved restraining the prisoner on a tilted board, their face covered with cloth. Water was slowly poured over the cloth. The sensation of drowning, the absolute, overwhelming panic of a body that believes it is dying, was induced deliberately. Repeatedly. The potro involved binding the prisoner tightly with cords that were gradually tightened with a stick. The cords bit deeper and deeper into the flesh with each twist. And throughout all of it, a notary sat in the corner of the chamber, recording everything. Every scream, every confession, every name given up under agony. Because under torture, prisoners did not only confess their own sins, they named others, and those others were arrested. And the cycle continued. But torture was not the most publicly terrifying weapon in the Inquisition's arsenal. That was reserved for a ceremony so dramatic, so carefully designed for maximum psychological impact, that thousands of people came to watch. The auto da fe, act of faith, was the Inquisition's public ceremony of judgment. It was theatrical, deliberate, designed to terrify. Prisoners were paraded through city streets in procession. They wore the San Benito, a distinctive yellow robe painted with flames and devils. A tall conical hat, a rope around their neck. The message was unmistakable. This person has sinned against God, and God's justice is about to be served. The ceremony could last an entire day. Prayers, sermons, the reading of charges. Thousands watching from the streets and windows. Most prisoners received lesser sentences. Public humiliation, flogging, confiscation of property, years of imprisonment. But some did not. Those deemed unrepentant, those who refused to confess or who had relapsed after confessing, were handed over to secular authorities. The Inquisition, maintaining that it did not execute people, simply handed them over. And the secular authorities burned them alive. In the most severe auto da fes, dozens were burned at once. The fires visible for miles. The smoke rising over the city. A message to everyone watching. This is what happens to those who defy God. Or those who defy Spain. But here is the detail that changes everything about how we understand the Spanish Inquisition. A detail that most history books quietly ignore. The Spanish Inquisition was not primarily a religious institution. It was a political one. The key to understanding this lies in who controlled it. Not the Pope. Not the Church. The Spanish crown. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella created the Inquisition as a tool of state power. By targeting conversos, converted Jews and Muslims, the crown could seize their property, eliminate political rivals under the cover of religious persecution, enforce loyalty across a newly unified Spanish kingdom. The Inquisitor General, the most powerful position in the Inquisition, was appointed by the crown, not by Rome. The first Inquisitor General was Tomás de Torquemada, a man whose name became synonymous with cruelty across Europe. Torquemada presided over an estimated 2,000 executions. He expelled the entire Jewish population of Spain in 1492. Over 150,000 people. Forced to leave behind everything they owned. Everything they had built. And when the Pope tried to rein in Torquemada's excesses, the Spanish crown simply refused. The Inquisition continued for another 300 years, serving not God, but power. And the legacy of the Spanish Inquisition did not end when it was finally abolished. Because what it left behind, in the stones of its prisons, in the records of its trials, is still being uncovered today. The Spanish Inquisition was officially abolished in 1834, 356 years after it began. By that point, it had processed an estimated 150,000 cases. Of those, between 3,000 and 5,000 people had been executed. The records of the Inquisition, millions of pages of trial transcripts, confessions, denunciations, survive in Spanish archives to this day. Historians have spent decades analyzing them. And what they reveal is extraordinary. Not just the horror of what was done, but the extraordinary detail with which it was recorded. Every session, every question, every answer, every scream, written down by a notary sitting in the corner of the torture chamber. The Inquisition believed it was doing God's work. It believed that extracting confession, by any means, was saving souls. That the pain inflicted in this life was nothing compared to the eternal damnation that awaited unconfessed heretics. Whether you believe that or not, the result was the same. 150,000 people passed through its chambers. And the world they came from was never quite the same again. The Spanish Inquisition lasted 3.5 centuries. It operated across Spain, Portugal, and the entire Spanish Empire. It reached into South America, into the Philippines, into every corner of the world that Spain controlled. And it did so with the absolute conviction that it was right. That God approved. That the suffering it caused was justified by the souls it saved. History has judged it differently. But the records remain. The trial transcripts remain. The prisons, in some cases, remain. Silent stone rooms where 150,000 people sat and waited for a knock on the door. If this story disturbed you, good. Subscribe to Veil of Europa. Every week, we pull back the curtain on the darkest corners of European history. The truth is always darker than the textbook. We'll see you in the shadows.